The way that I look at it is that fear is seen as a stop sign, and it truly is an indicator that something is important. And it does not always mean stop.
What does it mean to live boldly, to feel and step into what it is to be bold? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to Women Leaders on the Move, a Her C-Suite Radio podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Benamou, and every week I bring you inspirational stories and ideas that will help you on the journey of your career. Today, I'm joined by Leigh Burgess. She's a best-selling author, speaker, and founder of Bold Industries Group. And she has a signature bold framework that we talk about. She empowers others to lead with purpose, and also through her events, coaching, and the Bold Lounge podcast, she inspires bold actions and builds community. We're going to be talking about her brand new book that's launching today, The Bold Leader: Decide What Matters and Deliver What Counts. I can't wait for you to hear all about it. So let's get started now. Leigh, I am so excited to welcome you to Women Leaders on the Move today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this conversation because you have all kinds of things happening that we're going to share with our listeners. But I always like to start with one question, which is talk a little bit about your background and how you got to this moment today, because what you're doing today isn't necessarily what you had envisioned when you started your career. So share a little bit for our listeners about you and all the things.
Definitely, I think for me, I never thought about being an entrepreneur. And obviously, that's what I am now going into year 6 of our company. But prior to that, I was in the corporate world in healthcare. I was at 2 large academic medical centers. And really, my goal was to really help operations and administration around clinical research. So, in the sense of kind of where I was and where I am now, never thought of owning my own company or writing books. I mean, we all say, hey, I could write a book on that. But I think actually getting it done and doing the things that we're doing throughout the company, which includes consulting and events and memberships and all the good stuff in between. I think for me, one of the biggest things was the precursor to it all was just knowing that I needed to make a change and I was burnt out. So I had gotten to a place of real burnout in the middle of 2020 and I couldn't get out of the rut I was in by doing the normal things or the things that worked in the past. And I really needed to make what I call a big swing of bold. And I ended up quitting without a plan, which I don't advise. But for me, it was the only choice I had at that point, and really fueled by belief and the framework that I created. Off I went. And here we are, year 6, about to start.
Well, first of all, congratulations on making that bold move. It is a hard thing to leave. I think we both left our careers at about the same time. I did it at the end of 2020. So it was a moment like no other. But you have developed this incredible framework. You mentioned it a minute ago, and I would love for you to just share a little bit about how you came up with it and what does bold mean for you?
So for me, I'm a big acronym person. It's how I learn actually as well. I did that a lot in high school when I was memorizing those types of things. And for me, when I was at that point with like my what's next and what do I do, I think taking action really is the antidote for any type of anxiety or stress or fear that you have. And so I wanted to figure it out as fast as I could and be efficient. So for me, it was creating, an understanding of what I needed to do, which the first thing I really delve into was my beliefs, which so the framework is believe, own, learn, design. And I started with my beliefs, doing an audit. Where was I? What did I want to do? At that time, I was 48. So it was the first time I'd really like put my head up, I think, in a long time to think, do I want to do something different or do I go back into the world I was in after a rest or, a reset? Or do I, want to do something new? And so I really didn't limit myself with what was possible. And I think it was like the first time I thought, well, I could be anything I want to be, and probably hadn't felt that since I was 18. So 30 years before that. So it'd been a while. And then I walked into really the O part of the framework, which was own. And I really wanted to understand what was I owning that led to my burnout? What was I not owning that possibly led to my burnout? And a lot of mine was really around my health, all the levels of health that you have, but really paying attention to that intentionally. And also, I think for me, and a lot of men and women, but primarily women can relate to this of I was owning things that weren't mine to own, whether it was some of the roles, the jobs I was doing, or some of the responsibilities I took on willingly, but ultimately too many, and trying to fix things so much. So I don't always have to be the fixer.
I think that own part is so key because a lot of times we do take on the world. We're givers, perhaps, or we're problem solvers, and we're like, I'll solve that for you. When sometimes we just need to solve what's in front of us. And, to quote the famous Mel Robbins, let them let me. And so I think that's kind of where you got to that let me moment of, you know what, I'm going to own what I own. And what happened next? Because there's this cliff that happens. I know women talk about this where you leave and there's no meetings constantly. You're just, all of a sudden your day looks so different. What happened next as you were going through this?
Yeah, what was interesting is once I gave my notice, so I gave a month's notice, and I at the same time was starting to I think different lights in the room in my brain were like opening up that had been closed or maybe never even explored in the sense of what was possible. So actually by the time that I left my last day, 2 days after that, I got my incorporation for the business. So I got at it. Honestly, I took action and started to learn what I could do. Now, my first day I would say, of being an entrepreneur was so interesting of in the sense of when I woke up, I didn't sleep late, but I was only sleeping 2 hours during my burnout. It was like 2 to 4 hours max. So I did sleep a little longer, I'll say, but I think in the sense of getting up and what was the routine, I knew that would be a big thing for me because I was back to back meetings and just on the go and consistently, easily a 7 to 7 day. So I knew ahead of time that I needed to reset how I was working and the habits around my working. So for me, I focused on my health next. I got outside. I took drives with my family. It was fall. So, in New England in the fall, it's just gorgeous. And I started to do things that I never got to do because I was working. So for me, I really started to have little mini adventures in the sense of what I needed to do to kind of just get my creativity and my sense of ownership of my own life and my health back. And that's what I spent time on. Got a coach. That's very important. And again, all in parallel with thinking about the business and what I wanted to do next and who I wanted to work with. But it is really important to think about your habits if you are leaving a role or if you're transitioning to a different role, or maybe you're retiring of what are the habits that I have each day now? And do I like them or do I want to keep them or do I want to reset them? So I went into kind of a habit reset and an audit across my health and wellness.
Sleep is such a big component. Ariana Huffington came out with that book about sleep being this really important thing. She reached a burnout for her health. She wasn't sleeping and everything. What were some of the things that you've discovered for your health that's improved since you've made that a priority for you?
I think your health is a long game. So I think that's important for me to start with. So, meaning that it's not something you just do, check the box, and you're done. I think also with your own improvement or, self improvement, I think those are types of things that, you may understand something and then it could come back. So I think it was a combination of action oriented things I was doing around my wellness. So that could be eating, that could be moving, and also sleep. I think also relationships. There's such a big piece of our mental health and we don't realize sometimes when we're in this, I will say, this hamster wheel of action that we're in meetings and doing the things. And we get home and then we're exhausted and we sleep and then we get up and we do it again. You may not be able to talk to friends or have relationships or have the depth of conversation you might want to have with your husband or children or, go to that soccer game, whatever it may be. So for me, it was really focusing in on the things that were important because what I discovered one of the major reasons that I burnt out the way that I did, and there's several variables, but one of the major ones, I was just so misaligned with my values. And so, that belief audit and the values that I wanted to reestablish as priorities, that was big for me in the sense of that. I think when it comes to your emotional health and your mental health and your spiritual health, all the different levels of health that we have, I think they all feed off one another. I mean, I was not moving, I was not eating well, I was eating like one meal a day. And for me, I'd gained 67 pounds just in 3 years. And that was weight I had lost before. So, I'm now 10 pounds to go. I'll be back to where I was. So I've lost 57 pounds over the last several years. And I think for me, that was again trying to figure that out. Now I'm 53, which it's easier to lose weight at 43 than 53. So there was kind of figuring it out along the way. And also remembering that just because you burnt out once doesn't mean you won't burn out again. I think that's something to remember for all those hard workers and folks out there that are ambitious in a good way for themselves, to know that, there are signs of burnout, and not to miss them like I did. I kind of ignored them, I think is what I did in the first pass.
My daily habit that I've had my whole adult life, the first thing I do, well, second thing, because I read now. I don't think I did that when I was younger. I start out reading, and the first thing I do is work out, whether I take my dog for a walk, then I work out, or, there's some kind of combo every day, 7 days a week. And it really just sets me for the day for whatever that might be that's coming up. And I'm wondering if there was anything through this process for you. Was there anything that came up for you that was a new habit that you started or one that you kept?
I've tried a bunch of things. I think one of the habits I'm still trying to figure out, like, what's the right one for me, is the journaling or writing down my thoughts. Like, I'm getting better, but man, it's a slow process for me. So, in the sense of kind of how I use it and what it can do. But I have been trying that most recently in this year of trying to figure out how to get my thoughts onto paper. So sometimes things don't swirl in my head so much. They just get on paper, and some that gives them a parking lot, so to speak, or a parking spot. I think one of the major things I did was I started moving. So I do have a habit of walking every day, in the sense of I may run here and then, like do some interval type of run walk, but at least walking 2 miles a day. And on certain days, if I have a great schedule or some things, like I may go for a hike for, 3 or 4 hours, in the sense of that. But I know if I don't do my walking, like I feel it by, noon, in the sense of like, wow, I feel a little bit more agitated with what just happened, or I feel like, I feel a little drained. So I think the movement was important. And I think the other thing was the length of my day. So I was starting early. I was working in the office, let's just say 7 to 7, back to back meetings. And then, of course, if you're in back to back meetings, when you work, when you get home. So I would come home, eat my one meal a day, which is a very bad habit. So another habit I reset was when I ate. So 5 times a day, smaller meals instead of just one big meal at the end of the day, which I think led to a lot of the things that happened health wise prior to that. And then I think we would then, I would get back on probably and work from 9 to 11. So it was whack. So those kind of got reset too. So I think it's just important, as you're starting off as an entrepreneur, you hear a lot of advice and guidance and set your schedule and all of that. And you have to do what you need to do. But now in year 6, like I try on Mondays and Fridays to only meet with who I really want to meet with and what I really want to do. And that gives me space and time to be creative, or to take a longer walk, or, throw ball in the backyard with, my dog Alvin, or just do things that I think in the past I never would have even been able to think about doing.
I love that sense of freedom, and I'm wondering if that also helps with your creativity because you've written one book. Your book feels amazing. It is so beautiful. Every page is so well thought out. How did you think of that in terms of the layout and the flow and all of those things? Did all of these habits feed into your being able to visualize what that was going to look like?
Yeah, I think definitely you can't be creative, one, if you're just cramming things in, or like be creative and someone like points at you. So like you have to have some mental space, and you have to have clarity, which I did not have prior to that. So even as I started my company, I thought about putting a book out. Like I had it on the vision board, but I'm so glad that I waited several years, because the depth of it and the way that it's laid out, and it is a beautiful book. I'm so proud of that book, and the way that you work through it, it's how I read, honestly. So I like a little bit of space. I like activities, and I like to be able to apply something, because I think for me, like, reading leads to new knowledge and learning that you can apply. And the way that I do it is through activities. And so I've heard someone describe the book as each chapter is like a workshop. And so doing that was the way that I wanted to go into the book, and thinking about, how to lay out the book and then make it pleasing on the eye, in the sense of not just a lot of words crammed in and left adjusted or right adjusted. It was just, I wanted it to be something that could feel like you're flowing through the framework, which that's what the book's all about. The first one is around the framework and understanding, kind of, starting with your beliefs all the way to designing your blueprint for your life.
And now you've almost finished, but when this releases, it is the launch day. So
Woohoo!
yay! So let's talk about your new book. What is it about? Who is it for? What was the experience? All the things.
Yeah, so like I've been in book mode pretty solid for 2 years now. So I started in July 23 with the first book and here we are, second book in 25 and they actually have the same release date. And so in the sense of this book, it really is the kind of all the learnings that I had from the framework and it pulls it into really leaders within whether it's your organization, leading your team, or leading yourself or leading your community in the sense of if you're a bold leader, what's holding you back or what moves you forward with regard to your decisions? And then how do you measure boldness, so to speak, in the real world? What does it look like? We all see these dashboards and KPIs and all the things that we have in the corporate setting, but I don't think there's a bold factor on there in the sense of like, have we taken risk? Are we doing things that maybe create discomfort in what we're doing? Or have we fallen into something like comfort and what that looks like within organizations could be very different? Or are we making too many changes, right? Because there is also an alignment of how much change an organization or a team can handle. So it gets into some of that. But my favorite piece of it, where we start off, is really our brains and around boldness. What keeps us from making some of the bold moves? So I wanted to understand because I've seen it so many times within either the organizations I work with in my consulting or the things that I do with my clients one to one is particularly around what keeps someone from making that first bold step, which is the hardest one, right? So the neuroscience around taking the step really is around fear a lot of the times. I'm fearful of not having enough money. I'm fearful of not having a job. I'm fearful of not having the same group of friends, or I'm fearful of not having that identity, my identity connected to that organization. So it really delves into the mindset and some of the things that we're actually training our brain to be bold when we're taking action, gaining more confidence, taking agency in our life. And it becomes this cycle, which I talk about in the first book, but the second book really gets into the neuroscience of it all and then how we measure it.
One of my favorite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt, "Do something that scares you every day." And that's kind of what you're talking about, is making a bold move. What were some of the things, I know you work, as you mentioned, with clients and you work one to one with coaching. What were some of the things that you discovered that were a through line for the thing that was keeping them back in their bold move?
Well, I think everyone wants a guarantee a lot of the time, and they want to know it's going to work as much as possible before they take the step. That's just not possible in so many scenarios. There may be some that you can guarantee something will happen, but most of the time when we're making a change or we're doing something different, it's not guaranteed. And I think a lot of people want that. And then that creates more fear. I think sometimes the through line was that women see fear, or women and men, but a lot of I work with women, they see fear as a stop sign versus an indicator. And fear really is an indicator that it's important. What you're about to do or the decision you're about to make is important. And I think one of the myths of being bold that I talk about in the first book is that it's not thoughtful. It's you just jump and you don't even think about it. And being bold, the way that I define it and our community defines it, is a very thoughtful, pragmatic move that you're making. It's not just because or because she did it or because I want to today. It's like very thoughtful. I mean, I just didn't decide at my desk on the same day I'm quitting and I'm walking into the office. You may do that in some scenarios, but not at 48. You have to think a little longer than, 5 seconds. So this is something that I worked with my family on of like, if I can't find another job, here's a scenario A, B, C. What could we use? And, I use savings and some of my retirement to have a little bit of space for renewal and reset health wise and to have an ability to start the business. And it still was a 5 month, it was a very short runway, but I was willing to take that risk based on belief in myself and knowing that I was going to take action. I wasn't just going to sit around and wait for something to happen or wait for something to land in my lap. I was going to go for it.
Since you had a long career in corporate and now you've been an entrepreneur for 6 years, what were some of the things that you really appreciate about the difference between the 2?
You are still stressed on certain days. Not every day is a butterflies and rainbows day, but I think the highs are longer in the sense of the things that go well, like you're able to hold on to them longer. It's not the next thing, let's go. You did that, check the box, move on. I think also how I measure success, like success in the corporate world really was salary, title, impact, not in that order, but in the sense of like those were the things that meant I was doing good by a scorecard. You can get promoted when, once you have these experiences or once you achieve these milestones, you'll get paid X. And those were, they're regular markers in any world of that. But I don't really feel that way anymore. Now, I still want to make a salary. I still want to do the things that I want to do, but I don't look at it as if I don't make X, that doesn't mean I'm successful. Or if I don't have a certain title, that doesn't mean I'm successful. So I think defining success is very different for me now. And I think the freedom to really make the schedule, but there also is the responsibility that is, I would say, higher in the sense of like, if you don't accomplish what you're setting out to do, you know who the boss is, like you're kind of, you're it. And so I think as I've grown my team, I've really thought about some of those ways to delegate and to diffuse knowledge and to make sure that I'm not doing everything all on my own, because you might start out that way, but that isn't a way to actually be able to scale or to be able to stay in, your business or to do the things that you want to do long term.
Yeah, it's that own piece, right? But now it's you really are owning it because you are the decision maker in the end of the journey that you're about to take. For the people listening to this, what would you like them to know specifically about this book and what is your hope that they take away?
I think the book really does leverage the knowledge of the bold framework, and we talk about it a little bit, but what the book will do is help you understand how to manage some of the things that do come up as a leader when you are dealing with change or innovation or unexpected things that are happening within your organization or maybe even your life, of how you approach it with a mindset of boldness and how you can manage your fear and understand it better, and then measure success not just based on accomplishment of something, the checkbox, but the steps, the learnings, the things that you did to get there. We don't always get the slam dunk or the home run, but I don't know if we're measuring some of the things that are the smaller steps. So it gives you ideas around that and also gives you activities and resources to measure that. But the biggest thing is like, how are we managing our brain and our mindset, and understanding kind of the actions that we're taking and the bold steps that we take are actually retraining our thought process and retraining our brain on what's possible, and kind of opens you up to new things and takes off some of the limits that I think can happen within teams and organizations. That's really a big piece of it that came from my D90 consulting model that I created, which is also inside the book, because I chose to start off the business by creating a model. D is designed 90s, 90 days, and to work with organizations in these 90-day strategic sprints as a consultant, which forces organizations to radically prioritize what's the most important thing right now. And knowing that that can change, and it is something that can ebb and flow with regard to priorities, but I think sometimes we have way too many with our own organizations, and at least I found that, and it was hard to accomplish them all at the level that you wanted to. So what's first, what's second, what's third? They can't all be number one.
I love the 90-day sprint because this notion of what's going to be in 5 years and 10 years is just not realistic anymore to be planning based all your planning on that, right? You could still think about where you want to go, you should, but the 90-day sprint, I think, is so much more attainable. What is the one thing that you are so excited about?
I'm excited, one, like whenever you write a book or, get your words out there, just seeing it in other people's hands and seeing it in a bookstore. I'm excited for that. I think also in the sense of just being able to share the journey, because even thinking of the D90 or the things I've learned around fear, it's really come through my knowledge of working with others and myself. The reason that the D90 was born was really out of my, I had a timeline that I needed to launch my business, and I actually used that model that came out of the actions I was taking. I was creating the model. I didn't even know I was doing it to move forward. And I think the book can give you not only the tools, but I think also open maybe your eyes or open other doors to possibilities that you may not have thought possible. People think that boldness is big and loud and huge and all, all the things, when it sometimes is a step, a thought reset, a reframe of how you do something within your team. And I think that's what I'm most excited about, of people being able to really approach it with their lens on, what they need and really apply it in their life.
I'm so excited. Congratulations on launching your second book. I know it's going to be a huge success. I will have the links in the show notes. If people want to find you, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so best place is probably my website, so leeburgess.com, and you'll see how to follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, as well as all the things that we're doing throughout the company and what we're up to.
I cannot wait. Congratulations. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. I am so glad that I had the opportunity to meet Leigh in person when she came here for her first book signing. It was such a thrill to see the book and meet her. If you are interested in learning more all about her book and everything else, be sure to check out the show notes. If you found this show helpful, I would be so honored if you would share it with a friend or colleague. Rate and review the show. It's how people find us. Keep shining your light bright. The world needs you.